Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting on Hazard Park and Proposition 68. Today is Monday, January 11th, 2021. So this meeting is hosted by the Department of Recreation and Parks with support from the Office of Council Member Kevin DeLeon. My name is Stephen Tran, and from the Department of Rec and Parks, I welcome you to actually the sixth meeting on the proposed project at Hazard Park for Proposition 68 grant funding. Hazard Park is located at 2230 Norfolk Street in Los Angeles at California 90033, and it's in the Council District 14. Here's the address information for you to contact in case you have any question in regards to the park, its maintenance, as well as programming. Today's meeting is being streamed via Zoom as well as Facebook Live. So if you want to comment and ask questions, you can either do it from Zoom or Facebook Live. Once this meeting is adjourned, we will go ahead and upload the meeting to our YouTube page, which can be accessed via this link. And please ask us if you would like to have the link available in the chat box. And to go over some of the meeting guidelines, the first thing you should do is actually sign in. In the chat box, Yumi has a link to a sign-in sheet, and we encourage you to sign in. First thing, this is actually very important for documentation and for the grant. We will have actually two presentations today, and as a result, we'll have two questions and answers session. The first presentation will be by a representative from Cedars-Sinai, and the second presentation will be the overview of the capital project proposal for Prop 68 funding. Now, at the end of the meeting, we will have a survey in the chat box, and we encourage you to actually complete the survey and let us know how we're doing. To introduce you to today's panelists, we have Nate Hayward, the Capital Projects Director from the Office of Councilmember Kevin DeLeon. We have Laurel Barash, a research advisor from Cedars-Sinai Cancer Research Center for Health Equity. We have Daryl Ford, a superintendent from Rec and Parks, Planning, Construction, and Maintenance. And from the Rec and Parks Grants Administration, we have Bill Jones, a Chief Management Analyst. I'm Stephen Tran, Senior Management Analyst, and Yumi Sangen, a Management Assistant. Jorge Rodas will be our Spanish interpreter from Barbier International. And just to go over the meeting agenda, first we'll have an opening remark from CD14. Then we'll go to the Cedars-Sinai presentation by Laurel. We'll have questions and answers about the Cedars-Sinai presentation. And then I will go over an overview of Prop 68 and round 3 results. Daryl then will take over to go over the scope of work for the project that we will submit for Proposition 68 funding. And then that will be followed by a questions and answers session about the capital projects presentation. And then we'll have a survey with closing remarks from CD14. So to start today's meeting, please welcome Nate Hayward from CD14. Nate?
Oh, thank you all. How's everybody doing? So my name is Nate Hayward. I work for Councilmember Kevin DeLeon as his Capital Projects Director. And we are really excited that everyone is attending tonight in hopes of getting Prop 68 funding for Hazard Park. Last year, the Department of Recreation and Parks and the city partnered together to apply for funds for Hazard Park, did a very large community outreach process that engaged hundreds of people in the Hazard Park area, from Ramona Gardens to Lincoln Heights, El Sereno, as well as Boyle Heights, period. And our office and the council member, he actually authored Prop 68, is a huge proponent of improving our parks across the city. And we really want to hear from you all tonight about your thoughts on the proposed project, because we need all your support when we apply for this funding from the state. So we ask, please ask questions, participate, listen to the great presentation we're going to have from Cedars-Sinai, as well as our Rec and Park staff. And please stay engaged. Thanks.
Thanks, Nate. So to start today's meeting, we'll have a presentation from Laurel Barash from Cedars-Sinai. And let me give you a brief introduction to Laurel. So Laurel is a public health professional with an expertise in health disparity research. She received a Master's of Public Health from the Graduate School of Public Health at San Diego State University, and a Bachelor's of Arts in Social Ecology from UC Irvine. So her earlier career was focused on global health research, and she participated in projects in Mexico, Jamaica, Australia, and Europe. Now, over the last 9 years, she worked to address the health disparities among adolescents and young adults with cancer in the greater Los Angeles region. Laurel is currently the research advisor at the Cancer Research Center for Health Equity at Cedars-Sinai, and supports efforts to reduce cancer incidence and mortality and high-risk behaviors in under-resourced neighborhoods in Los Angeles County. So without further ado, I will hand over the presentation to Laurel. And I will first have to exit the screen. Here you go, Laurel.
Thank you. Okay, can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction and for the opportunity to chat with you tonight. I hope to give you sort of a high-level overview of what research tells us about physical activity and parks and health. And then I'll talk a little bit about a current initiative that we have at Cedars right now to help improve those in those three areas. So in the field of public health, we're really beginning to understand all of the benefits that parks can have, on individuals and in the community. They can help foster mental, physical, and even spiritual health. They can advance health equity. They can be a place where kids can flourish through programming, through social connection. They can also serve as a powerful prescription to combat chronic disease. And parks definitely are a place that encourage physical activity. And so that's where I would like to focus for the next few slides. So sub-levels of physical activity continue to be sort of a public health crisis in the United States and really globally. Rates of overweight and obesity are expected to continue to rise. And all of this has impact on health outcomes, including obesity, heart disease, diabetes, various other diseases, and namely cancer. So we at the Cancer Research for Health Equity really tend to focus on risk behaviors in cancer. And then within physical activity, or rather we could call it physical inactivity, there are disparities, and health outcomes are often worse for young girls and for minority groups, racial, ethnic minorities, across the spectrum. So when we go back to the lens of cancer and we think about the benefits of physical activity on cancer, we know that physical activity can decrease the risk of several cancers, especially among those who are overweight or potentially have a history of smoking. And we also know that cancer survivors who are physically active live longer and have less side effects. So what does research tell us about parks and park design and physical activity and the interaction of these three areas? So Deb Cohen, a research scientist that we work with, she's based out of Kaiser, over the last 10 years has working within this framework of SOPARK to observe parks and park users, to look at what they're doing and how they're utilizing or not utilizing parks. And so what she has found is that there are multiple disparities, and she has also helped to identify popular features that lead to greater park use and more park-based physical activity. So some of the disparities in park use that her and her team have uncovered are that parks are more often used by males than females. They are used the most by children and the least by seniors. Parks are used less in lower income neighborhoods than higher income areas, even if they have similar facilities and programming. And fear of crime is often a barrier to park use that we see. So when we look at what accounts for increased park usage, there are a number of things like more green space, more populated areas, higher income areas, places that offer supervised programs and facilities. We also see that marketing and branding can influence park usage. So really creating, helping to foster an identity for people in the community to feel like their park is part of their neighborhood. So we also know through the work of Deb that parks with walking loops have more users, especially among seniors. So when you look at parks without loops compared to parks with walking loops, the ones with loops had 80% more users and twice as many seniors. The physical activity levels are higher, and they are just more populated with people. So also looking at playground elements in parks, you can see that when you look at the different equipment that is present in parks, you can see a greater playground utilization based on the number of features that are offered in terms of a playground. And here you can see that things like climbing, sliding, swinging, crawling, splash pad, all of these things really do impact park utilization. So here are just a couple of pictures from in the field where we see great examples of structures that invite kids to play and use different gross motor skills. So we also know that fitness zones increase park use and physical activity. They're used throughout the day, but it also depends on their placement. And Deb and her team have found that when these zones are clustered together, you see better utilization and less vandalism. So now I want to talk a little bit about the initiative that we have at Cedars-Sinai to both improve park utilization with the ultimate goal of improving health and well-being, both physical, mental, and social and spiritual. So if we take a step back, we can look here at a framework that the World Health Organization has set forward for just increasing physical activity. And they have outlined, really change takes a multi-sector, multidisciplinary effort. And it's difficult to marshal this type of collaboration. But if you look at these 4 categories that they've laid out, parks really have an integral role in each of these areas. Environments, meaning physical environments, systems, the people who come and use the park, and then societies, different community organizations and neighborhood councils and all of the different partners that come together to really make a park a space where people want to come and be active. So the initiative that we launched at Cedars really is one of those multidisciplinary, multi-sector initiatives. And it's a 10+ year initiative that is linked to the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic movements that will take place here in our city in Los Angeles. So we want to transform the way people in this city feel, move, and connect. And as I mentioned, this is really a partnership. Our close partners, the City of Los Angeles Department of Rec and Parks. We also worked with the Art Center, College of Design in Pasadena to develop really a campaign around this. And then we have partners like Garmin and Stanford University who all contribute to the science of what we're attempting to do. So this is just a mock-up. Again, I mentioned the Art Center. Over the last 1.5 years, we've been working with their design students to create inclusive artwork and graphics that could represent and motivate people to help get moving. And this is just an example of posters that potentially are going to be put up around the city to promote Shine LA. So the questions that we're trying to answer through this initiative. So we want to know how we can best promote physical activity in ethnically and racially diverse communities, and particularly boys and girls and people with all abilities. We want to better understand how we can harness community to improve physical activity and mental health. And then we also want to understand how we can sustain changes beyond the Olympics. So historically with Olympic movements, there's a lot of energy and excitement in a city, and the year leading up to it, people get engaged, and then you see a drop off after the Olympics. And there aren't a lot of examples where people have been able to successfully sustain that increased activity level. So that's one of the goals that we are working towards. So this initiative, as I mentioned, is about 10 years, and it's broken into 4 phases, with each phase building on the next and informing the next phase. So it's a really iterative 10-year project where we want to start very locally in the communities to understand how people are using parks, how they're using green spaces, and then, ultimately that will inform the large scale intervention that will happen the year leading up to the Olympics. So phase 1, we started this in early 2020 and we made some headway, and then COVID happened. So we had to put some of this work on pause, but we went out into the community and we met with Rec and Park staff and users and community partners, as I mentioned, to understand how people are using spaces. We wanted to know what is working and what isn't working. Why are people using parks? Why aren't they using parks? What are the barriers and challenges? So some of the initial high-level findings are that there is a lot of interest in getting more girls involved in sport, and people want strategies to how to effectively do this. There needs to be a holistic approach, especially in lower income communities where all of the social determinants of health are considered, recognizing that a lot of people use parks, for potentially after school care or enrichment programs, or maybe a safe place for their kids to play while they're at work. So recognizing, or maybe even a food as a food bank or a resource there. So recognizing that it's not just about getting people in to play soccer, but there's this more holistic approach. But getting people in to play soccer is important, and good quality programming matters. So, programs that are led by people who are well trained and well versed in the sport is important. Harnessing youth culture, so understanding what youth are interested in, and is this music, is it merchandise, is it swag, is it jerseys, what is it that's going to motivate kids to stay active? And that was a theme that we heard over and over. Promoting safety is a big, just a big challenge, perceived and real, and so I think that we heard that a lot of times people have very successful programs where they've partnered with, maybe LAPD, where they have a mentorship program, or local schools where they have a safe, pathway to work or to the park. Also partnering with neighborhood councils and community groups and maybe sports organizations to just think together about how to make this a space where people feel safe. So where we are today with Shine LA, so as I mentioned, we're really starting with listening to the community members, identifying common challenges across the different socioeconomic levels of parks, and recognizing the differences, but also the commonalities and what these areas have in common. And then identifying goals. And all of these build up and lead to the design of these behavioral interventions that ultimately, we hope in 10 to 12 years, we'll be able to really prove that we've made a difference in the physical and mental health of our people of our city. So in conclusion, I hope that I gave a very, high level and brief overview of how community-informed research tells us that when parks are well designed and well thought out, they can be spaces for people to not only have fun, but also a space for people to increase or improve their mental, physical, spiritual health and social connection. And I think this opportunity for the Prop 68 funds is a really unique opportunity where this money could be directly used to expand and renovate Hazard Park, and has the opportunity to improve the lives of everyone in that community. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Laurel. As Laura mentioned, Shine LA is a multi-year initiative and partnership between City of LA, Recon Parks, Cedars-Sinai, and other organizations. And Shine LA also has its own website. If you Google Shine LA, you can find out more about the project, and spread the word amongst your friends and family, so they can learn about it, and more will come out in the ongoing years, and we will we can't wait to actually see the actual outcome of this project and how that project can improve the lives of the residents of the city of Los Angeles. So right now, if you have any if you want to ask any questions related to the presentation, please feel free to ask those questions in the chat box. And we'll take questions in English or Spanish, and we'll provide you with answers. If for whatever reason, you have questions that pop up later on, please feel free to contact us and contact Laurel, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. So we'll wait a few seconds to see if we get any questions. So we have one question from anonymous attendee. How have you reached out to the community to see how Hazard Park is utilized?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we are in the beginning stages of Shine LA, and we are not currently in every park. And so the initial formative focus groups and interviews were not conducted specifically in Hazard Park. We did go to Lincoln Heights Rec Center, and I'm probably not getting that name exactly correct. But yeah, so we didn't go specifically to Hazard Park in this initial phase, but the idea is, in interviewing other areas and local adjacent parks, that we are kind of getting a sense of the community, and that eventually when this rolls out the later stages in a few years, that we will have the opportunity with the city's help to work within each individual park and rec center.
Thanks, Laurel. And I guess the second question sort of relates to the first one. I'm curious if you explored the immediate needs of Hazard Park. And I think you mentioned that you went to Lincoln Heights to basically do some research there.
Yeah.
I just would encourage, I'm sorry, were you going to say something or just?
Oh, was just going to reiterate that we didn't speak directly to the Hazard Park staff, but based on the recommendations of the City of Rec and Parks, we started with seven parks across the city, but we hope to have the opportunity to speak to folks at Hazard Park.
Thank you.
And actually, I should add that I believe Zul Sarani, our Director of Community Outreach and Engagement, potentially did visit Hazard Park very, very early on. And so I can certainly follow up with any insight that he had at that time, but they weren't part of this formal Shine LA initial stage.
Thank you. Another question is, have you spoken to the staff about these meetings? I suppose the Rec and Park staff?
Yeah, so all of this work has actually been facilitated by Rec and Parks. So they are, and that's really where this partnership it's a true partnership. So we work really closely with Mike and Vicky and others, and they have been the ones to lead us to parks that they thought would be a good place to start. And they're very aware of our project. And so it's a real collaboration. So yeah, they are at the table with us every step of the way.
Thank you.
Stephen, this is Bill Jones. I would just like to add to this conversation that, as Nate Hayward pointed out earlier, this is a continuing conversation that we've had with this community. We held several meetings about a year and a half ago. And so we are involved with the community and we are involved with the park staff on these issues. So thank you.
Some of the community members who that attended meetings early on were not notified of this meeting. What can you do to provide community outreach? So to answer your question, we have done outreach in conjunction with CD14. We have also done outreach via social media. We've also done outreach through our network of volunteers. So we are sorry that that you were not, or the people that you're representing were not did not know about the meetings, but we did do outreach beforehand. And just like I mentioned earlier, if at the end of the presentation, we'll have surveys that you can actually complete, and let us know, if there's something that you'd like to, for us to follow up on. And this particular meeting will also be uploaded on our YouTube channel. It will also be available on Facebook. And so you can go ahead and forward this meeting to whomever you feel should be watching.
I see another comment or question about neighborhood councils. And I don't know if that's directed to me or maybe the larger group, but it's such a great question and such an integral piece. And that was the next phase of our phase one. And then COVID happened. We were actually in the process of identifying all of the neighborhood councils at each of those 7 sites, and reaching out to people at schools and people in LAPD and other community organizations. And all of that came to a halt in March with COVID. So I think we've been trying to give people the space to, deal with the pandemic, but we're really anxious to connect back and finish that conversation.
Thank you. So is this partnership between Rec and Parks and Cedars-Sinai being funded by Prop 68 funding? No, it is not. So this is a completely separate project. However, we are involving Cedars-Sinai tonight as a means to promote, Shine LA and let you know about, the partnership with Cedars-Sinai. And so you can follow future, programs and be part of future programming that is, in conjunction with Shine LA. And so this meeting is essentially, the main objective of this meeting is for us to get funding. We want your input. So to put together a grant application for a Prop 68 grant that will fund capital projects. So so this Shine LA initiative is not funded by Prop 68. So we, at this point, we have no Prop 68 funding for Hazard Park, and we are seeking funding. Another question is, we can help you connect with LAPD and a neighborhood council that will welcome your presentation. Thank you very much, and let us know about any particular needs.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I think we've answered the questions. I don't see any more. So if the attendees would like to ask more questions, please feel free to email Laurel or basically provide your questions through our survey, and we will transmit that to her. And that concludes the first part of the meeting with Cedars-Sinai. And I want to thank you very much, Laurel, for being part of tonight's presentation.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you very much. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main presentation. So tonight's objectives is to basically inform you of this funding opportunity, which is Prop 68. We want to let you know that the department will resubmit the grant application that we submitted last year, for this 4th and final round. And we want to present this project for funding so you can provide us with your feedback. Now, last year, actually Nate helped to moderate, 5 meetings with the community for the Hazard Park project. And so you can see we had, dates ranging from April through June. And we did, these meetings at Hazard Park. And many community members showed up, which resulted in the application that we submitted and that we will resubmit. To give you an overview of Prop 68. So Prop 68 is to create new parks and new recreation opportunities in critically underserved communities. It was approved by 57% of the voters on June 5th of 2018. This round is the fourth round, and it's also the final round of the Prop 68 grant program. Now at stake is $395 million for round 4. So that is the total amount of funding that is available for all the agencies within the state that are eligible to apply for Prop 68 funding. This is a competitive grant. So what that means is the funding is not guaranteed. We are resubmitting the application last year in the hopes that we will get a grant award this time around. And we're coming back to you tonight to represent the project. The maximum grant request per application is $8.5 million. And what that means is when we provide the state with a budget, for this project at Hazard Park, it can be no more than $8.5 million. The applications are due on March 12th of 2021, and the project must be completed by March of 2025. So we have essentially a little bit less than 4 years to complete the project if we get the grant. So going back to the round 3 from last year. Last year, the state received 478 applications with a total request of $2.3 billion. Last year, the state had about $254.9 million available for grant giving. The average grant request, meaning the average application, asked for $4.8 million, and the average grant amount provided was $4.1 million. Also last year, out of the 478 applications, 62 were provided grant awards. Now, out of the 62 awarded grant projects from last year, 28 were to create new parks, 14 were for the expansions of existing parks, and 20 were for renovations. So this project at Hazard Park would qualify as a renovation project. Now, why are we eligible for this project? First of all, it has to create at least one recreation feature, and Daryl will go over with you what we are proposing. Now, all the applications have to meet at least one criteria. Either there's 3 acres or less of parkland for 1,000 people per half mile around the park, or there's less than the household median income is less than $56,982. And in this case, Hazard Park qualifies for Prop 68 grant funding because the median household income is way less than the $56,000 threshold, which is $35,710 for Hazard Park. So at this stage, I will hand over the presentation to Daryl Ford, our superintendent for planning, construction, and maintenance.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Again, this is Stephen said. My name is Daryl Ford. I'm the superintendent for planning, construction, maintenance, and recreation parks. So wanted to take some time tonight just to walk through, as Stephen noted, what we had submitted in round 3 for Hazard Park for the Proposition 68 grant, to talk about what was in that grant application, which again, as previously noted, we had a series of community meetings to identify these features, and we thought that it would be a good idea to resubmit the project essentially with no changes, and I'll talk to you about that right now. again, for funding under Proposition 68. So just to start briefly, the slide that you are looking at right now is a summary slide showing the feedback that we got on the um, previous application we prepared, is essentially for round 3. As you can see on this slide in the summary that's provided in front of you, we had a lot of comments that we received in those 5 community meetings that we held. A large number of comments we had about the parking lot and its accessibility, a lot of improvements about sports field improvements and the need for lighting, additional improvements about restrooms, and about the sports court at the facility. So this chart's just to show you that we had a lot of good results to our survey, which really went to inform the application that we prepared and the that we submitted to the state. So again, also on the screen, just before we move on, just noting on the side, it also talks about some of the other improvements that were mentioned in the surveys and the community meetings that we had, including the soccer field, the batting and pitching cages, and seating areas as well, and also larger playground. And we'll talk a little bit about those and how they got incorporated into the previous application, and then again, into the application that we're submitting for round 4. So the next slide shows you, this is a graphic that we had prepared for round 3. And essentially, as I said before, this is what we're going to be resubmitting in round 4. But very briefly, I'll walk you through what's in front of you on the screen today, again, which was built out of all the great community input and meetings that we had in the last round. So just as an overall summary of what it is we're proposing to do in this application. So the proposed renovation of Hazard Park will add a substantial number of recreational features to the park. Those improvements will include 2 new fitness equipment areas with shade, 2 new 2 to 5-year-old playgrounds with shade, a brand new 5 to 12-year-old playground with shade, monuments recognizing the LAUSD walkouts, new fitness trail, a new synthetic soccer field, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well, right where that informal dirt field exists, a brand new dog park on the Soto Street side of the park, also some improvements to the baseball diamonds with new batting cages, trees, and all across the park, upgrades to the walking paths, to the entry nodes, and finally the addition of a performance stage and area. Beyond just those improvements to the outdoor park area, we're also talking about making some of those quality life improvements, both to the gym and also for park users. So to speak about the gymnasium building that we have there, part of our grant scope includes HVAC renovations, so the heating and air conditioning system in the building, as well as, and this is not in the building, but separately, the construction of a brand new freestanding exterior restroom. We all know how important it is to have restrooms in the park. So one of those items that we want to pursue is the construction of a new exterior restroom. And then all throughout the park, there will be lighting upgrades, security lighting, field lighting, as well as the installation of security cameras. And the parking lot, this is the one, again, that's adjacent to the recreation center building, that would be upgraded as well. And it would include such features as stormwater capture, so that when it rains, we have the ability to capture some and treat some of the stormwater that is running through that parking lot. So overall, it's a very extensive renovation of Hazard Park, again, with the ideas that were brought up in the community meetings, but really that really highlight some of the great features of the park that really are designed to enhance the existing activities there, as well as to bring some new activities to the park and to provide new spaces for folks to recreate. So just again, briefly, I'll kind of walk through this graphic in front of you, and there'll be plenty of time, of course, after we go through this to talk more if you have particular questions or details about it. But I'll just start on the upper left-hand side of the screen. If you're looking at the presentation, there's just a kind of a zoomed in view of the entry node of the park that would come off of the recreation center. So if you go through the existing parking lot, where the 2 playgrounds are on the western side of the park. So really reimagining that area of the park to make it a true entry and provide a nice entry plaza there. Again, upgrade the playground equipment that's there, provide shade. As we know, those playgrounds over there certainly use more shade to provide, again, some fitness equipment would go in this area. And then again, as we talked about, just north of here, we would renovate those baseball diamonds. So again, on the upper left-hand side of your screens, just kind of a zoom in to show you really thinking about how to both make the park more welcoming and opening, but also so that as you come into the park, those recreational features are there for you. And I know that in the earlier presentation, Laura talked a little bit about fitness equipment, and those are the kind of thoughts that we really put into this, is thinking about where can you locate things like fitness equipment for folks and families that feel comfortable in using them. We have both the proposal to do kind of a fitness plaza here, as well as provide fitness equipment along the circuit as well. So speaking about that, on the right-hand side, the top right-hand side, this is again a nice graphic just as an overlay of Hazard Park if you're familiar with it. On the top of the screen is really the western side of the park. So if you're familiar, just so you orient yourself, the top of the screen is to the west. So just looking there, and I'll start there, you'll see the graphic shows the idea, all conceptual, of where a new fitness path and trail could go, again, with the idea being that there'll be well-defined entrance nodes on the western portion of the park. This is the portion of the park that comes out to San Pablo Street, if you're familiar with it, and to really upgrade those entrances on those sides of the park and add a new one near the southwest corner of the park as well. So to connect those to the fitness paths and provide new fitness equipment along those pathways. In addition, you can see here on the screen, again, kind of in the middle of the graphic right there, we're proposing the installation of a new performance space or an outdoor amphitheater. It'll be just to the east of where the fence line is, where Legacy LA is, and that bait and shard that currently exists in the park. So again, the idea is to kind of reutilize that open space, take advantage of the terrain and the geography there to bring some activity into that portion of the park with the addition of a new performance area and amphitheater. And again, all this would be connected with new walking paths and fitness areas. So really trying to tie the whole park back together. So right in the middle of the park, again, just to the east of where the skate park is, and kind of directly in the middle of the screen if you're looking at the presentation, is where the synthetic soccer field would go. And again, if you're familiar, this is kind of an informal dirt area that is currently existing there just east of the skate park. And the idea is to really formalize this space and build a dedicated synthetic soccer field here. Would not be a full-size field, but the idea is to provide a space so that we can provide more recreational activities at the park, but also by using a synthetic material, it would minimize the amount of downtime that you need for that area and that space. So it would enable us to provide more programming. And just to the north of this synthetic field, we're proposing this installation of a new freestanding restroom. So again, we know that restrooms are very critical, and since this is sort of an activity node and area of the park, we thought that providing a new restroom in this location again would be optimal, and again would be located along the fitness path, near the synthetic field, and also near the playgrounds. So this is just the conceptually proposed location for the new restroom building. And so those are the majority of the improvements that are located on this side of Hazard Park. So moving over to the Soto side of the park, on this side of the park, you'll see that over here, we're proposing to replace the existing playground that's located on the Soto side of the park and provide a brand new 2 to 5 year old play area, and as well as a 5 to 12-year-old play area, along with, of course, new shade. And again, as you know, the playground on the Soto side of the park is very small. So this would be a significant enhancement to the play features that are located on that side of the park. Obviously, that side of the park that is closest to the nearby residents that are right across the street over there, right across Soto. So the idea was to really, again, make this portion of the park welcoming, to enhance the features that are over there now by providing brand new playground equipment that's very visible for the community. This side of the park would also have a series of new plantings. And again, as you can see in the graphic, enhanced walking paths on this side of the park as well. Finally, on this side of the Soto side of the park, we're also talking about the development of a dedicated dog park area. Now, this again would potentially be an off-leash dog park area that we'd have on the Soto side of the park. This is just essentially to the south of where the playground would be. The idea again is just in that kind of open lawn and dirt area, really, to be frank. But the idea is to really look at providing a dedicated space for folks to bring their animals to, where they can have their animals off leash in the park, and the area would be available to them. Dog parks are very very useful amenities, not only just for the dog park users themselves, but by providing a dedicated space for folks to bring their animals to the park so that both dog lovers and their owners can enjoy the park, and the dogs themselves, of course. By providing a dedicated space, you help to kind of take the dog activity maybe happening in other areas of the park. Fortunately, a lot of parks have issues with off-leash dogs. So by providing and kind of a recognized dedicated space for that, it really helps to address any dog issues at the park. So the idea again was here, based on a lot of the feedback we got in the first round, to provide a dedicated dog park space in the park. So that's just a quick overview again of the major amenities that are proposed in the Proposition 68 application. This graphic again is a conceptual, it's a schematic design level. And if we are successful in getting the Proposition 68 grant, ultimately we would use this kind of conceptual design, further development into plans, working closely with the community to really identify the final locations for many of these improvements. So the next slide, just summarizes all those major elements that I went over for this grant application, which are exactly the same as we had submitted in round 3. So we really did think that Hazard Park was a good application. They got a lot of great input from the community, had a lot of features there, both new features and enhancements that we thought would make a good candidate again to resubmit. So just this list here just highlights a lot of those improvements that are discussed and proposed, and again talking about some of the new features like the outdoor amphitheater and the dog park. But really, I guess it's important to also focus on a lot of the enhancements of bringing better playgrounds and play spaces, better walking paths and fitness equipment, so people who are in the park and circulating in the park feel welcome there as well. And then always highlighting the importance of upgraded landscaping and new trees for shade, as well as lighting. Everyone, again, I don't know if I said this before, but we completely recognize the importance of having adequate lighting in the park so that all park users feel safe and comfortable being there. And we at Recreation Parks firmly believe that's an important element. And then again, highlighting, you've seen a lot in the graphics, a lot of talk and discussion about walking paths. So just really enhancing folks' ability to circulate around in the park, making additional connections where the park pathways don't currently exist, both for the purposes of fitness, but also, again, just so folks who are moving to the park can better enjoy that experience and have safe and fully accessible pathways to go ahead and do that. So again, that was just a very kind of brief summary of the scope items proposed for the grant application. And we're here tonight, as Stephen and everyone said at the beginning, to get your input, some additional feedback from you, and to hear your ideas and your thoughts on this proposed scope of work. So as Stephen noted at the beginning of the meeting, there's a chat box that's available, multiple ways for you to get your questions to us, and we look forward to continue to dialogue with you tonight, and we appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl, for that. I think Stephen is having just a little bit of difficulty right now, but he should join us shortly.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was speaking the whole time and thinking that somehow I was being heard. Sorry about that, everybody. Yes, so I have the presentation back to the schematic for reference for in order for us to answer your questions. And I was actually going over the questions, and so thank you, Bill, for letting me know that I was not being heard. So thank you for leaving some kind comments for Laurel. The first question is from Thomas. It says that the irrigation needs on the east side of the park continues to be ignored. It is the most neglected plot of land in LA City park system. Soccer field is really for Bravo High School. Let LA City Schools pay for soccer field. The whole park is a dog park. for the white hipsters that are gentrifying the neighborhood, very chic, better security, don't overdevelop this special green zone. Okay. There's a lot of issues in that, that you've identified, and thank you for making us aware. And Daryl, you may want to pitch in terms of, in this, as part of the Prop 68 grant application, we are asking for development of specific, amenities, including the dog park, that will be funded by the grant award. So this, should we be successful, with the grant award, we will, the funding will help pay for the dog park and, the ball field, the soccer field, excuse me.
Hey, Stephen, it's Daryl. I'll go ahead and chime in here too as well. So yeah, absolutely. As Stephen just noted, and it was shown earlier in their presentation, a key part of the Proposition 68 process is identifying, the new recreational features that, new or renovated recreational features that we would be providing. So a lot of what you see in here is really taking advantage of a lot of the great features in the park and enhancing them and upgrading them. Again, to the example of the playground on the east side, on the Soto Street side, it is definitely in need of a replacement. So a lot of these improvements are really enhancing those things that do work in the park. And then again, recognizing that there are some areas where we have the opportunity to provide enhanced amenities that both kind of meet the need of those who are using the park, but we also, again, amenities that we think will be competitive for Proposition 68 and provide brand new resources for folks. So just to a couple of specific things, I think that the comments were brought up about certainly the irrigation will be addressed in the park. So part of the application does include landscaping. So trees and irrigation would be addressed as a part of that. So certainly if there are ongoing and existing irrigation needs, we would get to see those replaced as a part of this project. To the commentary about the soccer field, obviously the idea is to provide recreational amenities for all users. So obviously our park provides programming. That's what the primary focus of the field would be. So it's really, again, recognizing that we have these users there in the park already, and what can we do to provide an enhanced experience for them and a better experience for them. And then to the comments about the park being a dog park, again, that's a lot of the input that we got in the first round, in the first 5 meetings we had, did speak to that issue. And luckily, Hazard is a park where there is a lot of space that's available that's not fully programmed, that could potentially be used for an amenity such as a dog park, again, with the idea being to help concentrate some of the activities in an official area. That's not to say that the open spaces in Hazard are not loved or not welcomed. Again, the comment about not overdeveloping it is certainly well taken in our part of recreation and parks. But again, the idea is to take advantage of a space that doesn't have a lot of active programming as potentially a location for a dog park. But we certainly hear the comments about concerns of overprogramming. And again, the features that we have put here, again, with the input of the community in the meetings that we had, are really designed to look at what's happening in Hazard Park and other ways that we can provide the right amenity mix, or ways that we can make the right number of improvements here, just to make an overall better experience for everybody. So that would be my comments back to the ones you just went over there, Stephen.
Thank you, Daryl. Another question is, will the handball courts be removed?
Sorry, Stephen, do you have you do have it on there. So you can see in the image, if you're looking in the here, there's no change proposed to the existing handball courts that are there. So if you look, if you're looking again at the screen, it would be on the right side of the screen, essentially right where the new Norfolk Street comes through, and you can see the handball courts are still in the graphics. So the short answer is no, there's no proposed change to the existing handball courts.
Thank you. Another question from Thomas is, how many stalls in the bathroom, and how can we prevent homeless from moving into the stalls? I guess this is a recurring question in regards to the, automatic ex-salute restrooms.
Yeah, I'll tackle that. So one of the things that the technology we've been investigating and that we've recently installed in the park in North Hollywood, and we're moving forward with future installations in a number of different parks across the city, is a technology, an automated restroom technology, which is Stephen just said. The particular one that we're looking at is brand that's called Exalu. And the idea is that it's an automated restroom that is a self-cleaning automated restroom that has a number of features and amenities that help to prevent things, as the commenter noted, potentially about folks camping out in the restroom. So it is a restroom that is designed to allow you to use the facilities, and you can set a timer on it. And it gives you an audible warning telling you when you need to leave the facilities. We have the one in North Hollywood that's set to give an alarm after you've been in there for 10 minutes. Gives you plenty of warning, by the way, before the alarms go off, but it gives you an audible alarm that your time is up in the restroom, and then it opens the doors. So it has a couple of features there that are designed to prevent camping out. And again, it's an automated restroom that is self-cleaning. That doesn't mean it doesn't require other maintenance. It does still require maintenance, just not as much maintenance as an existing restroom would if it was a stall that wasn't automated. Potentially what we're looking at, talking about stalls, is the installation of a 2-stall model here. And essentially you would have 2 single occupancy stalls. So they would be fully ADA accessible, but they'd be 2 single accommodation stalls. So, and again, as you noted in the graphic that's before you, we're proposing to put that just off of the walking path by where the proposed synthetic soccer field would go. So the answer is we are looking at a 2-stall automated restroom that would be fully ADA accessible and would have a number of features that would help keep the restroom cleaner and would also help to minimize as much as possible the maintenance that's needed for the facilities. And I think, as everyone who's in this meeting knows, maintenance resources are certainly at a premium given this current crisis. So the automated restroom also helps us by helping to reduce the amount of maintenance in there. It's a great technology, and we're looking forward to trying to install it in a lot more parks and facilities across the city.
Thank you. The next question is from anonymous attendee. The gym is outdated and needs updates. Why was it a new gym considered as opposed to an event space? Daryl, would you like to chime in on that one?
Well, I can give the short answer, which is there's not enough money. So the back to an earlier part of this presentation, the Proposition 68 program maximizes, there's only a maximum, I believe, of what is it, $8.5 million that you can apply for per application. So new gymnasium building. So the idea that there'd be a removal and construction of a new gymnasium building could easily cost double or triple that amount, really depending on how it's designed and developed. And that's a very large building, of course, that's there at Hazard Park. So again, cost is just the simplest answer. The Proposition 68 grant is not in a sufficient amount to fully fund the construction of a new recreation center building. And if it was something that we applied for, we, the city, as a part of our application, would need to show that we actually had sufficient funds to build it. So we would not be able to, for example, apply for a new recreation center building and ask the state to pay for that $8.5 million without being able to show that we also have the resources to fully fund that project. So cost is the short answer to that.
Thank you, Daryl. And I would also like to add that another factor is timing. Although the grants are if we do get a grant, if the grants, since the grants are due in 2025, we also have to factor in how long it takes to be able to implement some of these projects as well. Another question is from Ray Rios. Great additions. Can you clarify if there will be grass on the east side of the park? Currently, there is only dead grass. Lack of irrigation has been a grand issue for many years now.
The answer is yes. And again, if it's not shown well on the graphic, we'll make sure that it is. So if you look again on the screen at the bottom of the screen where the new play areas are in there, you'll see a couple of references to new natural turf areas at the picnic areas. So yes, the idea is to reinvigorate the Soto side of the street to definitely address if there are outstanding irrigation issues over there, turf issues, as well as issues with the trees with new plantings. So yes, the intent is to have turf on the east side of the park.
Thank you. Another question from Ray is, can you clarify on the monuments that will memorialize the east side walkouts? Other park champions were also discussed during earlier meetings to include late and longtime park director Ray Wente and wetlands champion Alex Mann, as well as Sal Castro.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. So absolutely. So that input for those three was noted in the first round. And the idea is that recognizing folks in the community, including, again, so the three individuals that were noted, as well as those involved in the 1968 LUSD walkouts, that is the intent. The application as it is in front of you today is, again, a schematic level. It just shows where we would put a number of the amenities. But in the application itself, part of what we communicate is that our idea for some of those beautification items, based on what the community given us, and that you've reiterated it right there, was to recognize these folks who were very important to the history of this side of town, and to some of the local events that happen here. So ultimately, if we are successful in getting this project funded through Proposition, our Department of Recreation Parks would work with one of our sister city departments, the Department of Cultural Affairs, to conduct an RFP process, which is a request for proposals, that would be based on this feedback that we've received to help us identify a prime artist who would then work with us to actually fully develop and build up that artwork. So there would be another process that would happen if we are successful in this grant application, again, working with our colleagues at the Department of Cultural Affairs to further flesh out what that potential art would look like, what that potential monuments could be, because that is a very important part of our Proposition 68 application, is that inclusion of art that's really designed and driven by the community. So we do look forward to, if we're successful, having further public art engagement with the neighborhood.
From Ray, sounds great. Thanks for the response. You're welcome, Ray. Thank you, Daryl. So I think that's all the questions we have so far on Zoom. Yumi, do we have any on Facebook?
We do not have any questions on Facebook.
Okay, we have another one from Thomas. Be aware that once spring arrives, tumbleweed on the hill on the east side of the park is deeply seated and has 3 years of establishing itself. How can Rec and Parks control and eliminate? Well,
it's a great comment. Oh, sorry, Steve. I was just going to say it's a great comment, and I think part of what we would do with this project, like we always do, is with sufficient capital dollars, we can look and see what long-term changes we can make over there. You didn't hear me when I was muted, but I kind of laughed because we have unfortunately, that sort of issue in other parks as well. So our maintenance staff, as I'm sure you know, with our local maintenance staff, is familiar with the problems when that happens. But the idea would be that with the funding from the state, we can try to address some of that emergent activity as early as we can to make sure it doesn't become an out of control problem like it can. And you're absolutely right. The tumbleweed can quickly establish itself and just make a real challenge to kind of rooting it out.
So I think that's the last question that we received. We'll just, yes?
I'm sorry, there was one last question that was asked, but it was answered online. Will any of this funding go to the improvement of actual programs at the park? That's a very good question. And we do want to highlight that Prop 68 funding is used for capital development, essentially construction services to improve the park, and that the funding is not eligible for programming. However, that said, the department is looking to improve and expand programmatic activities at several parks, including Hazard.
Thank you, Bill. We had one question. Can we get cameras throughout the park?
Hi, it's Daryl again. The answer is the answer is yes. So I'll just answer it with yes. But as a part of our lighting element of the project, so that would include cameras and security cameras as well. So we do use camera technology in a number of our parks. It's not a camera technology, just so everyone who's listening is aware. where someone is actively watching the camera. So I want to make sure that that's clear. But we would be able to put security cameras that can record, and if an incident happens, what we end up doing is we go back, or the LAPD will go back and retrieve the information from the camera, the data from the camera, to investigate the issue. So they're not cameras that are monitored live, but they're cameras that would be able to be placed strategically throughout the park in areas of high concern as a part of the lighting element of the project that would enable us to go back if an incident happens and to pull that data and provide that to the authorities as necessary.
Thank you. And that's currently the last question that I'm seeing on Zoom. We'll just wait a few more seconds to see if anybody has another question or comment. And Yumi has provided a link to an audience survey, and we encourage you to complete this survey to let us know how we're doing, but also to provide any other suggestions and comments you have. Another question from anonymous attendee is, it's my understanding that the city has additional funding that was not exhausted during the USC beautification project. Are you aware about those funds? I'm not aware of those funds. Daryl, are you aware of any funding?
Stephen, I'll address that. We did identify that funding as one of the funding sources in our round 3 application, and that we understand that that funding is still available and will be brought into this project if it's awarded by the state.
Thanks, Bill. Another question from Thomas is, what's the next step? Well, the next step is, we have a deadline of March 12th of this year. And once we complete this meeting, we will complete the application. Because of the fact that we applied last year, the application is pretty much complete. We just need to update the application and update with the fact that we had another meeting. Once we complete the application, which includes the budget, we will go ahead and submit the application, online to the state. The state will review the application, sometimes after the deadline of March 12th. And traditionally, what the state has done is the state has gone out to each park and done a site review. And they did that last year. They visited every single park that we applied for. For this year, we'll have to wait and see because of the pandemic. And last year, the state took about 6 months to provide us with, an announcement of whether or not a grant was successful or not. And so given, so we expect about the same time or even more, just, given the uncertainties surrounding the pandemic. But certainly after we apply, the state will provide us with an answer as to whether or not the grant was successful. I would say sometimes perhaps during the fall. And I hope that answers your question about what the next step is. So that was the last question that we had. Yumi, any question on Facebook?
There were still no questions on Facebook.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to encourage you to complete the survey. And if you had not actually signed in earlier, please do so. Okay, so sounds like we've answered your questions. And at this time, I'd like to ask Nate Hayward to provide a closing remark to today's meeting. Nate?
Hi, Stephen. This is Yumi. I believe Nate had to depart the meeting due to an emergency, but I see that Lucy Aparicio is in the meeting, and Nate has informed me that she could provide any closing remarks.
Great, thank you. Lucy, would you like to provide us with a closing remark? Is she muted, Yumi, currently?
Lucy, you've been promoted to panelist. You might have to unmute your mic. One second, let me see if I can allow her to speak. Lucy, I believe you should be able to speak now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for all the work and the participation. CD14, we're just committed to fighting to get this project funded and working with the community through the process, obviously, seeing it through and ensuring continued community participation and input. Thank you to everybody, and again, just stay engaged, and we will do our part as well to provide any updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. And last comment from Dulce Acosta. Great meeting. I have to jump off, and thank you very much for attending. So I'd just like to take a moment to just thank everybody for attending tonight's meeting on Hazard Park. It was a pleasure to work with the community last year and this year to complete this project for a possible grant. And I wish you the best of evening, and we hope to be providing you with good news when this grant is provided. Thank you very much.